Mic has fallen down again here. We're going to have to fix that tape. Good evening, all of you. Good to see you. Good evening online. Tonight we're going to go into our 2 Corinthians chapter 13 in our study. We're still on lesson 13, which is the last lesson in our material, and we will have new material printed out, Lord willing, on Sunday so that we can have that ready for next Wednesday, where we'll be going on into the next part of our study. Before we get going, could I have one of the men lead us in a word of prayer? Don, could you do that for us? Please.
Our holy Lord God, our Father in heaven. Dear Father, we come to you this evening, thanking you, Lord, for the many blessings that you have blessed us with, and the way that you've taken care of us for the most part. We thank you, dear God, in heaven for Brother Kevin and his wife, that they're doing better, dear Father. I pray to continue to be with them and help them to completely recover from the virus that they have. We pray, dear Father, and thank you that we have had good health for the most part, us that are here, and even though, Lord, we're trying our very best not to get the virus in any way. We thank you, dear Father, that we can be here this evening to study another portion of your holy word. We pray that you be with Brother John tonight, Lord, to present the lesson. Help us all to see and understand, Lord, what the will is as it is revealed to us in your own word. Be with each one, Lord, that may be sick tonight. Be with those that are still breathing, dear Father, and with the loss of our sister in Christ. Thank you, Lord, for all your blessings. May we serve you faithfully. We ask this and pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. It did strike me that it was 1 week ago that on the way home, Tony was in a car wreck. And we had a very good study last time. Hope to continue that tonight. I was with her family today. It was very good. But still, we're going to miss her. That's not going to work. I said 2:4 instead of 2 Corinthians. That's not where I want to go. We're going to go into 2 Corinthians, and we're going to actually start in chapter 12. Boy, it did it again. How about you do what I said, not what you think you want to do here? Let's try this. Yes. All right. There we go. So we're going in our material into 2 Corinthians, chapter 10. No, goodness gracious. That's where my Bible just went. Yeah, how about we go to the right place? I'll get it straight here in a second. Let's try chapter 12, like it says on the overhead. My kids always accuse me of going back to Genesis chapter 1. And then the sermon on Sunday night, they fully expected that that's where I was going to head. And I didn't go there. I went to chapter 6. It was far, far away from chapter 1. So here we go. We were talking about the vision of paradise and the thorn in the flesh. And we brought up last week the idea that our flesh, in a way, is a thorn itself, and that temptations and trials of life can also be a thorn. And they are a reminder to us that we're human, that we have weaknesses and that we have imperfections, and that without God we are hopeless. And that itself, in a way, is a blessing. And that's why it's so amazing. In verse 10, it says, "Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities and reproaches and needs and persecutions and in distresses, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong." And Paul went on to do a little bit more of the foolish boasting, saying, "You have compelled me, for I ought to have been commended by you, but in nothing was I behind the most eminent apostles, though I am nothing. Truly, the signs of an apostle were accomplished among you with all perseverance and signs and wonders and mighty deeds. For what is it in which you were inferior to other churches? And what was that one thing they were inferior to other churches in? That he's about to mention here in verse 13? Financial. They were not contributing to his needs as he was there. And that's what it says, except that I myself was not burdensome to you. Forgive me this wrong. How dare I not take your money? They obviously had some problems, right? Now for the third time I'm ready to come to you, and I will not be burdensome to you. For I do not seek yours, but you. For the children ought not to lay up for the parents, but the parents for the children. And I will very gladly spend and be spent for your souls. Though the more abundantly I love you, the less I am loved. And we talked a little bit about the children, the children not laying up for the parents, but the parents for the children. But how about the more abundantly I love you, the less I am loved? That's a pretty sad paradox, isn't it? And sometimes that can happen. Young men, when they become enamored with a young lady, sometimes she spurns them because of their attentions, right? That's not necessarily the same relationship, but it does happen, right? Sometimes if we're not careful, we can begin to have an imbalance in our relationship. Now, is Paul thinking that he treated the Corinthians wrong here, and that's why they are treating him without love? No. Who's got the problem here? The Corinthians have a problem. And that's really been at the heart of 1 Corinthians and now 2 Corinthians, is the heart problem that they have, the selfishness and the division that selfishness causes has been giving them grief all of this time and is still really at the heart of the subject. It's verse 16. But as it may, I did not burden you. Nevertheless, being crafty, I caught you by cunning. Did I take advantage of you by any of those whom I sent you? I urged Titus and sent our brother with him. Did Titus take advantage of you? Did we not walk in the same spirit? Did we not walk in the same steps? And what does that mean, by the way? What is he saying there?
Titus is just like me. Before he said it.
And specifically, and he didn't ask for anything either, right? In this particular context, not only is he talking about the heart and the love with which they came, but also that they did not ask for anything in return for their visit. They did not come wanting anything financially from the Corinthians. And again, why is that? Why did the Corinthians need this special provision? Were they poor? Nope. They were, but that was a different kind of poor, wasn't it? They didn't have the ability, it seems, to be able to handle that example, especially based on what Paul knew was coming. Other people looking to control them, looking to take advantage of them, looking to take their money, right? In fact, he earlier said, "Oh, I'm sorry I didn't beat you," right? Like these other people are. I'm sorry I wasn't more abusive to you. It was a very difficult thing that they were allowing other people to treat them so poorly, and yet they were treating Paul so poorly at the same time. Again, that also happens if we're just, if we are without God, we don't have the same value structure. And the one with the biggest muscle might win, or the one with the biggest pocketbook. But instead, what should it be? It should be the one that serves God and puts him first. That should be the one that we see as a hero, the one that we love, not the one that's the most flamboyant or the most handsome, right? It's a rough thing. Titus did not take advantage of you. Did we not walk in the same spirit? Did we not walk in the same steps? Again, do you think that we excuse ourselves to you? We speak before God and Christ. But we do all things, beloved, for your edification. For I fear, lest when I come I shall find you such as I wish. Sorry, let me make sure I read that correctly. For I fear, lest when I come I shall not find you such as I wish. And that I shall be found by you such as you do not wish. All right? What did he just say? Say that again. What did he just say to them? Because he says it in a backwards way, right? He said, I hope I don't come and find you being evil and sinful. And I hope that I don't have to come and show you how strong I am and how hard I can be and how unpleasant a conversation we can have. That's what he just said. But he says it in such an interesting way. For I fear lest when I come, I shall not find you such as I wish, and that I shall be found by you such as you do not wish. Rebecca, would you have gotten that one if I said that to you when you were younger? No. But it would have been cool. I could have tried it. No, I don't think so. But I'm sure they understood, right? He's saying, please, please, take care of this so that I don't have to take care of it when I come. Lest there be contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, backbitings, whisperings, conceits, tumults. Lest when I come again, my God will humble me among you, and I shall mourn for many who have sinned before and have not repented of the uncleanness, fornication, and lewdness which they have practiced. That's what he didn't want. He didn't want to come and find the Corinthians behaving that way. And he didn't want them to have to see what he would do if they were behaving that way. That's exactly why he wrote this letter. He's trying to grab them, shake them loose from their foolishness, change their hearts so that they behave. And I must admit, as a father, I tried. Amanda and I definitely tried lots of different things. And I'm not picking on you this time, Rebecca. I've done that. I had more than one child. Always trying to find ways to get our children to understand why it was important that they followed the rules, why it was important that they not sin. Because when you're young, because I said so works, but as you grow up, you need to understand why it's important. And Paul certainly wasn't trying to just say, because I said so here. He was giving them very good reasons why they needed to listen. And specifically here, what is the reason that the Corinthians needed to stop sinning? Yes, and what is that? What is going to happen if they continue to sin? They'll be lost. They'll go to hell. The good news is here, and it's ready, and it's able to help. It's there for them. But if they don't listen, they don't change, they are going to have the same punishment that was applied in 1 Corinthians chapter 5 applied to them for a different reason. Yes, sir?
There are many places when Paul wrote that he showed his love by saying, how much I cared for you, I prayed for you, and all these things. This is a different kind of way of him showing his love. He said, if he found him not fulfilling and not doing it up to his word and warn, but because it hurt him so much when he cared for them, he was going to get something with it. It was an ultimate example of scripture. That's what.
That's exactly right. And he hasn't exactly been soft in this set of letters already. It's already been kind of heavy-handed in some ways, right? But not near what he will have to do if he comes and they have not listened and not changed. It's tough. But look at this list again. Jealousies, outbursts of wrath. We don't necessarily think of those as huge problems sometimes, especially when they're in us, right? When you're driving down the road, you start yelling because somebody cut you off. What does that sound like? If you're not careful, that could be an outburst of wrath, right? But I'm not sure that that's exactly what's talking about here. This is probably outbursts of wrath between the brotherhood, even harder than just an outburst of wrath to someone that maybe wouldn't hear you, right? Selfish ambitions. Well, I mean, if we're not careful, we have selfish ambition, right? It happens. Because, again, I like me. When we allow those selfish ambitions to become jealousies and outbursts of wrath, when we allow them to control us, James chapter 1, they become temptations that turn into sin. Backbitings and whisperings. Again, we don't really necessarily highlight those a lot of times. What is that talking about? Backbiting who? Whispering about whom? Christians. But could be others in general. But specifically here, I'm afraid it's literally talking about the congregation fighting among each other, having these feelings about each other. Conceit, and conceits, plural. Tumults. Lest when I come again, my God will humble me for those who have sinned and have not repented of uncleanness, fornication, and lewdness, which they practiced. Now, are these specific definitions of exactly what these things are? No. Why not? Because that's not how it works, is it? You don't have to have a specific definition of what sin is to understand it's a sin, right? You can have a group of things that are sins, and we don't have to tell you that this particular thing, this particular thing's not in the Bible. Well, I'm sorry, it's covered. You get it. You understand. Or you don't, right? If you don't want to, you'll have that. That probably goes up to the selfish ambition or the contentiousness, right? Yes, sir.
He's not specifically naming any names.
That's right.
He's just putting things out in generality for them to take into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying so many words that you fit for you wear.
Right. Now, do you think that there were some that read this letter that had these problems? Did he know their names? Probably. But he didn't use them. He didn't use them on purpose. The point of this letter was that it would be something for the church as a whole. It wasn't written to a specific person necessarily. And so that's what makes it so powerful to us now. As you're reading this letter, do you have these problems in your life? You better fix it, right? That's really what's happening here. This letter, in that it doesn't have a specific name. Unfortunately, though, it would probably be John, right? That would be my luck. If he named a name, it's probably John, and it would be me anyway. But in general, the point is that we need to look to ourselves when we hear these things, because we are all human, and we all have weaknesses that can manifest themselves just like it happened here in Corinth, right? All right. So, any questions on chapter 12 before we move on? Okay. I think we've done a pretty good job of covering it. Here we go. Chapter 13, verse 1. This will be the third time I'm coming to you. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word shall be established. As I have told you before, and foretell as if I were present the second time, and now being absent, I write to those who have sinned before, and to all the rest, that if I come again, I will not spare. Since you seek a proof of Christ speaking in me, who is not weak towards you, but mighty in you, for though he was crucified in weakness, yet he lives by the power of God. For we also are weak in him, but we shall live with him by the power of God toward you. Examine yourselves as to whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. Do you not know yourselves that Jesus Christ is in you? Unless indeed you are disqualified. But I trust that you will know that we are not disqualified. Did you get what that just said? How's he going to come the next time? The third time?
He hopes he doesn't have to come in weakness, and when he prefers to come in weakness, he's going to come in power.
That's right.
He's going to get rougher and
He says, you asked for this. And if you don't change, you're going to have it, right? And specifically, he is coming for whom? He is, sort of, but he's actually coming for the Christians that are still in faith, of the faith. And he's coming to get rid of those that are disqualified, right? That's what's going to happen if things don't change. How do you think Paul felt writing this letter? You don't like this letter. This is not a fun letter to write. This is not a fun feeling to feel. You want to feel good about these people that you love, that you helped birth as Christians. You want to hear that they are following the Word of God and that they love God and they're putting Him first. But all you're hearing is that they are fighting, backbiting, doing all manner of evil as well, right? Still worshiping idols, still sexually fornicating. That's tough. You don't want to hear that. But you're hearing it from valid sources, so, it's probably true. And he's saying, by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word shall be established. And what does he say before that? It's coming a third time. What's he saying? He says, the third time when I come and see the same thing again, we are going to have some talking, right? We don't need to worry about whether or not this is a valid thing to discuss if I come again and you still have these problems. There's no worry here. We're going to take care of it. What did he say in 1 Corinthians chapter 5? Though I'm not present, I still judge this situation. It's wrong and you need to fix it, right? Is he going to be present this time? Is it going to be the first time he's present? Has he already talked to them about these things? Now, again, Daniel, you're it. I remember coming home and there's my son playing with his toys after he had been told specifically to clean his room. And I come home first and I know my wife's coming. And it's really important for her that he clean that room. But I'm home first. Now, what am I going to do? We've already tried everything else. What are you going to do? Am I going to come in weakness or in strength? It's tough. It's not a good situation. He's scared. He's sad. He's upset. He doesn't want punishment. But he sure doesn't want to clean his room, right? It's tough. It's a battle of wills. And when you get to this point, there's not but 1 or 2 choices. And that's why he spells it out in verse 5. Examine yourselves as to whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. Do you know yourselves that Jesus Christ is in you? Unless indeed you are disqualified. But I trust that you will know that we are not disqualified. Yes, sir.
Basically what it's saying is, you look at yourself and straighten yourself out. Well, I don't have to do it.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not the first time in this letter he has said just that. He said earlier, I have every confidence that you're going to have this money for the saints at Jerusalem. I know it's going to be. But please don't let me come there and find you not having it, right? Please do not do that to me or to you. That is not okay. He is begging them in some cases, pleading with them to change, to be ready, to give their hearts to God, to put God first. And if they don't, oh, it's fine. Is that what he's saying? Oh, it's going to be fine if you don't do it. It's fine. No big deal. No, that is not what he is saying at all. He's saying that's going to make you disqualified, and disqualified people do not need to be in this congregation. That's what he's saying. Yes, ma'am.
Doesn't it sound like what the Lord tells us? That our judgment day will be paid this mountain?
Of course. Yes. It's exactly what God tells us, and it's here for a purpose. Because this is specifically talking about things that can be problems for us in the church and individually, and that can take us away from God if we're not paying attention. So is it important that we test ourselves? That we know ourselves that Christ is in us? When should we do that? All the time. Again, Psalm 1, right? How often are we supposed to be thinking about God and His law? Day and night, right? How often are we supposed to be praying? Always. Right? Now, if we're not thinking about God, if we're not putting Him in our heart, what is our heart going to do? It's going to do what it wants to do. And is that going to match up with what God wants? Not all the time. And probably not at all. Depends on what we want and how bad we get. But if we're not tempering ourselves with God's guidance, we're not going to be on the right path. Now I pray to God that you do no evil. Not that we should appear approved, but that you should do what is honorable. I gave my life for thee. What hast thou given for me? I gave my life for thee. What hast thou given for me? And I have brought to thee down from my home above salvation full and free, my pardon and my love. I bring rich gifts to thee. What hast thou brought for me? I bring rich gifts for thee. What hast thou brought for me? Thank you all for being here. I just noticed that our live stream had an issue. The client locked up, and you guys online have just come back. And now I'm going to let you all know that we love you and look forward to seeing you here in person. And if not, next time we will have services coming up Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m.